What happens when a billionaire CEO, known for his discipline and solitude, asks his assistant for just one dance? Elise Carter was used to being invisible, a woman who kept her head down, solved problems before they became meetings, and carried her late mother's compass as a reminder to choose one small act of courage each day. But everything shifted when Graham Harrington, the widowed CEO of Harrington Vale, quietly invited her to step into the light with him at the Harvest Moon Ball. Whispers turned to rumors. A grainy photo became a weapon. And soon, Elise found herself not only fighting for her dignity, but standing against powerful forces determined to twist her presence into scandal. Could a woman once overlooked become the steady hand that saves an empire? Could a man who lived with loss learn to trust in quiet loyalty rather than spectacle? And what might grow when truth and integrity take root in the harsh soil of gossip, greed, and fire? Stay with us as we uncover a story of resilience, love, and the power of being truly seen. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss a single moment of this journey. She knows how to disappear: a pressed blazer, a thermos that warms her palm, a silver compass at her throat that steadies her breathing. What Elise Carter does not know, what she has never learned in 35 years of careful choices, is how to be seen. That lesson waits for her at the edge of a vineyard morning, wrapped in fog and in the voice of the man who rarely asks for anything. The alarm hums at 5. Elise sits up in her small Petaluma apartment, feet finding the slippers she leaves aligned at the bedside. Outside, fog hovers low, softening the rows of grapevines beyond her window. She presses the compass against her collarbone for a moment, then sets about her routine. Clothes chosen the night before, a blazer brushed free of lint, shoes polished enough to reflect the lamp. She measures coffee into the thermos she favors because it fits her palm without slipping. In her notebook, tasks are marked by color: red for urgent, green for ongoing, blue for people she needs to protect from themselves. The act of ordering the day brings calm, a rhythm against the restlessness that sometimes visits when the house is too quiet. By 6, Elise is on the road north toward Healdsburg. She keeps the radio off. Silence feels steadier than news chatter or music that reminds her of what she has lost. The fog thickens over the Russian River. The headquarters of Harrington Vale rises from the land like part of the vineyard itself, wood and glass. Open courtyards, spaces filled with light. Birds dart through trellises, pumps hum below ground, moving fermenting juice in its invisible circuits. Elise arrives early enough that most desks still sit empty. She prefers it this way. She moves through hallways with soft tread, adjusting a misaligned chair, resetting a flickering lamp, catching small problems before they require meetings. Her desk faces a courtyard where rosemary grows against stone. She turns on her screen, arranges pens into parallel lines, and breathes, invisible. Yes, but steady. On the fermentation floor, Graham Harrington walks among the steel tanks. He carries a worn leather ledger, its spine softened by decades of his father's notes. Numbers in his precise hand fill new pages. He checks valves, tastes from a pipette, makes quiet marks. At 44, Graham is known for his discipline, his reluctance to indulge in spectacle. He is exacting with numbers and careless with meals. More often than not, he eats a sandwich at his desk and signs thank you notes by hand, alone. He carries solitude like another tailored suit. It fits him, but not without weight. By mid-morning, Elise feels the rhythm of the day settle. Emails answered, a shipping delay rerouted, a meeting rescheduled with words gentle enough to soothe a difficult partner. Her compass rests warm against her skin when she bends forward. Sometimes she forgets it is there until her fingers find it, rubbing the edge smooth. Her mother's voice lives in that small gesture. Choose one brave thing each day. Small is enough. She is not expecting Graham to stop at her desk. He rarely interrupts her directly. Instructions usually arrive through brief notes or meeting agendas. Yet there he is. The shadow falls first, then his voice. Elise. Measured, not cold, but precise, as if each word costs something. She looks up, His suit is gray today, pressed but plain. His ledger rests under one arm. His eyes are steady, but she senses an unease beneath them. The Harvest Moon Ball is Saturday, he says. She nods. She has already color-coded every detail: donor tables, catering schedules, security placements. Her role is to keep him from being cornered too long by gossip. They want me on the dance floor. A pause. The faintest trace of resistance in his mouth. For a few minutes, she waits, not sure if this is complaint or request. Then, would you? His eyes flick to the courtyard, then back. Would you accompany me for one dance? It might help settle the edges. The room tilts. She hears the hum of the building differently, as though pumps and air vents have leaned closer. Her fingers close around the compass. This is framed as logistics, she knows. A simple way to smooth appearances, to calm the donors. Nothing more, and yet, it lands in her chest like a key in a locked room. She thinks of the whispers that will follow, the sidelong glances. Nora's laughter when she hears. She thinks of her mother, who urged small, brave choices when larger ones felt impossible. Her throat is dry, but she manages a nod. Yes. Graham inclines his head once, as if relieved, then moves on toward the conference room, ledger under his arm. Elise sits very still. The compass is warm against her pulse. The air feels thinner. To be invisible has been her safety. To be seen, she is not sure she remembers a how. Her phone buzzes on the desk. A group text, Nora, reminding about Saturday's book club, teasing about the reading they have not finished. Elise dreads the inevitable joking if she mentions the invitation. Already she can hear the laughter. She sets the phone face down, presses the compass again, and exhales slowly. The weekend feels suddenly near, charged with a light she cannot control. It takes only one joke to turn a woman into a rumor. It takes far longer to scrape the rumor off. Saturday in Petaluma begins with the smell of coffee drifting through Nora Whitman's kitchen. A pie cools on the counter, its crust cracked in one place where Nora's impatience showed. The house hums with women's voices, the familiar chatter of book club. Elise has attended for years, grateful for this circle that made space for her after her mother passed. They start with small things, plots of novels, half-finished recipes, whose tomatoes survive the dry spell. Elise pours coffee, offers slices of pie, listens more than she speaks. Her blazer hangs on the back of a chair, her compass tucked under a simple blouse. But today, the air shifts when money enters the room. The ball is this Saturday. The Harrington estate will host. Even those who pretend not to care lean in when the name comes up. Nora notices first. She always does. So, Elise, she says, voice pitched loud enough for the group. When exactly did Mr. Harrington ask you to dance? The words strike like a pebble against glass. Light, almost playful, but dangerous in how quickly cracks can spread. Elise laughs softly, trying to fold the question back into harmlessness. It's just logistics, a charity thing. Nora's eyebrows rise. Logistics. Huh. That's one way to describe a dance under chandeliers. The others join in, their voices blending into something sharper than friendship. One recalls a story about an assistant who mistook courtesy for romance. Another describes the headlines when a secretary wore the wrong dress beside her boss. The laughter grows. Nora laughs the loudest. Elise tells herself it is protective, a way of claiming the joke before anyone else can. Yet the sound lands heavy, more doubt than care. She keeps her smile in place, steady as porcelain, and changes the subject to pie recipes and the weather forecast. She lets the talk move on without pushing back. Resistance would only draw more heat. In the bathroom, she locks the door and leans against the sink. The mirror shows her face, calm, though her chest feels hollow. She presses her thumb to the silver compass, its edge smooth from years of touch. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Her mother's voice comes with the rhythm. Courage doesn't come in cups, Elise. It comes in teaspoons, one small spoonful at a time. The words steady her. She smooths her blouse, fixes her hair, Anne returns to the group with composure restored. By late afternoon, Elise is back in her own apartment. The quiet feels like balm. She folds laundry with deliberate care, arranges her desk for Monday, and chooses dignity on purpose. If she attends the ball, it will not be as an ornament. She will not let laughter define her. She will be steady. She will belong by her own merit. Still, when she sets the compass on her nightstand, she feels its weight as though it asks more of her than she knows how to give. The message arrives after dark. Her phone buzzes. An unknown number. A photo loads slowly. Pixels first, then shape. Elise recognizes the setting. The barrel rose behind Harrington Vale. Grainy, taken from a distance. Two figures walk side by side. One is unmistakably Graham, tall, straight-backed even in casual clothes. The other is her, beneath the image. A caption company perks come in many forms. Her breath catches. The words are cheap, but the intent is sharp. Someone is watching. Someone wants a story told, and they want it ugly. Elise sits on the edge of her bed, phone heavy in her hand. Her first impulse is to deny it matters, to delete the message, to treat it as spam. But the picture is too precise. The number is blocked when she tries to trace it. The ache returns the ache of being visible, of having no control over how others see. She opens her laptop, begins drafting an email to Graham. She frames it carefully. Regret, professional boundaries. The wisdom of declining the ball. Her fingers hover over the keys. She cannot bring herself to send it. Instead, she closes the draft. She sets not one, but 2 alarms for Monday morning. If she must walk into headquarters with the shadow of gossip already swirling, she will do so prepared. The compass glints in the low lamplight. Her mother's voice echoes faintly. Teaspoons, not cups. Elise turns off the light, pulls the quilt close, and waits for sleep that does not come easily. When everything is glass, whispers travel faster than the facts. Monday returns Elise to the wood and glass hive on the edge of Healdsburg. The building seems brighter than usual, as if the fog lifted only to polish each surface into a mirror. She catches 3 versions of herself in one corridor, one in a window, one in a conference door, one in a frame print of the valley. In all 3, her shoulders look a little higher than they did last week. Reflections create copies of everyone. Copies multiply small expressions, and small expressions tell stories. A lifted eyebrow in a glass wall becomes 3 lifted eyebrows. A shoulder half turned becomes a lineup of backs. As Elise walks past the open kitchen, conversation trims itself and then resumes in a lower key. The hum of pumps below the floor sounds louder than voices, patient and constant, as if reminding the room that grapes do not care about gossip. She takes her desk by the rosemary courtyard, aligns her notebook, confirms the color blocks red for urgent, green for ongoing, blue for people who need gentle reminders. She sips from the thermos and runs a quick triage in her head. The compass rests under her blouse, cool against the hollow at her throat. She lets her thumb find it for a second, then opens the day. Cole Mercer arrives like a silk tie loosened just enough to say he is everybody's friend. He doesn't stop at her desk. He glides. Compliments like varnish, flawless event grids as always. A friendly warning dressed as care. Let's be smart about optics this week. He smiles with his mouth, but his eyes skim like stones across a lake. No depth, no sink. Elise thanks him without inviting more. She watches the smile hang for a beat, then reattach itself as he moves on. Her pulse stays even. She writes one new line in blue. Optics are not work. Work is work. At mid-morning, she walks the tasting room to check donor tours. Sloane Waverly stands near a barrel table, a glass of white in her hand, the color of winter straw. Her dress looks both simple and expensive, the kind of choice that deflects questions but collects answers. Sloane listens to the estate manager explain soil differences and canopy management. She nods with a pleasant face, all the while scanning the room in small angles, like someone measuring furniture for a future room. Sloane's gaze lands on Elise for a beat and holds, not unkind, not warm, more like curiosity, the clinical kind. Elise meets the look, then moves to a clipboard, checks guest counts, and quietly shifts a late arrival to a later pour. The move creates space for the next group. No fuss, no applause, but the room breathes easier. Sloane notices. Her smile tightens by a fraction. Back at the desk, a supplier delay flashes red on Elise's screen. A key shipment sits stalled on Highway 101 because a truck broke down near Cloverdale. She picks up the phone. She does not scold. She asks the questions that untie knots. Where is the backup driver? Which stop can be skipped? Which pallets must arrive first? She sends a message to the kitchen with revised timing. She alerts the dock team to be ready with extra hands. By the time she hangs up, the delay has shrunk from crisis to inconvenience. At the same time, the hotel alerts her to an overbooking for the weekend. 2 donors added guests without telling the reservation desk, and a traveling wine-writing duo extended their stay by a night, claiming a misunderstanding. Elise does not reach for blame. She calls a partner in 6 miles away, secures 2 quiet rooms, and arranges a shuttle with bottled water and a handwritten welcome note from Harrington Vale. She sends thank yous to both properties. She updates the donor concierge with new confirmations that look effortless because effort already happened off stage. An hour later, a small white card appears at the edge of her keyboard. No signature, only a narrow, precise line of handwriting saw the truck reroute and the rooms. Thank you. She knows the hand. She sets the card under her notebook like a pressed leaf, a recognition that feels like both balm and warning. Being seen can heal and also harm. After lunch, a meeting on the Overlook draws a cluster of department heads. The valley opens below like a quilt rose stitched in neat lines. River a darker thread, hills standing watch. Graham brings the old harvest ledger. He keeps it under one arm while they stand, the way his father used to, as if tradition requires a physical weight to balance modern systems. The talk is pragmatic water use, pick schedules, guest flow during heat. Graham speaks without fuss. When the others walk back toward the building, he stays for a moment. He opens the ledger, writes 2 brief lines, then closes it with his palms resting on the leather. His hands go still. Elise sees the stillness before she looks away. For a breath. The man who runs an empire does not look like an executive. He looks like a widower who misses music specifically, the way music fills a home and makes the air feel like company. She pretends not to notice. She is good at that. Some tendernesses deserve privacy, even when they are visible. By late afternoon, the glass walls deliver their rumor. A wine industry blog posts a memo leak. The headline is clever and cruel in the way clever things often are. A pleasant distraction at Harrington Vale. The body of the piece speaks about a trusted assistant who now accompanies the CEO to high-visibility events, as if accompanying were automatically suspect. The comments are worse. People who have never walked her hallways decide who she is. Someone mentions the old stereotype with a grin you can hear in the words. Elise reads only 3 before she stops. She recognizes the trap of scrolling. She presses the phone screen flat to the desk as if weight could silence it. Her cheeks feel hot, but her fingers stay steady. The leak signals intent. Someone wants her name to become a tool. Not to break her. They do not care if she breaks, but to pry something else loose. Control, position, access. Her mind moves through names and possibilities, not to accuse, but to prepare. Preparation is how she has kept herself whole. She breathes slowly, 4 counts in, 4 counts out, and turns to practical defense. Maintenance logs have become important in a way that feels out of proportion to steel and water. She prints 2 copies of the current schedule, sprinkler checks, valve inspections, contractor sign-ins. She cross-checks the signatures against digital entries. She adds dates in the margin where 2 data points do not quite align. She slides 1 copy into a labeled folder in her drawer and locks it. She takes the second copy to the small storage room near HR, where Maggie Rowan keeps a fireproof cabinet for contracts and insurance. Elise asks to file it there. Maggie nods without asking why. trust can be quiet. When Elise steps back into the courtyard light, the day has shifted tone. The air holds a high, thin tension. Eucalyptus leaves show their pale undersides in a small gust, then settle, far off, beyond the neat geometry of vines. The ridgeline carries a feeling she cannot name. A storm without rain gathers. Not weather, not now. Something else static, human, and coming. She returns to her desk, sets her palm over the compass, and lets the cool metal anchor her breath. The glass walls around her throw back 100 versions of the same woman. Only one needs to stay calm. She looks at tomorrow's blocks of color, red, green, blue. A narrow band of gold along the edge of her planner marks the night of the ball. She traces that line with a fingertip and tells herself it is just ink. She tells herself many true things in a row until the knot in her stomach loosens a little but does not untie. The pumps hum, patient as heartbeats. The rosemary lifts its scent as the sun leans west. Somewhere in the building, a door closes with a polite click that still sounds like a warning. Elise files the white card into a drawer, turns the lock, and watches the ridgeline until the last light fades. She is not ready to be a story. She is ready to work. So she does. And in the quiet after the hum, she hears the rumor move like wind you cannot see, brushing the edges of every glass surface as the valley holds its breath. Visibility is not the same as vanity. Sometimes it is simply the choice to stop apologizing for being good at your work. The morning after the leak, Elise wakes with the knot in her stomach still there. She dresses as she always does, in clothes chosen for steadiness, not spectacle. But as she drives north, she knows the week will require a different kind of preparation. The Harvest Moon Ball is no longer a line on a calendar. It has become a stage she never asked for. If she goes, she must decide how to walk into that light, not as rumor, not as distraction, as herself. In her small apartment that evening, she begins planning with intention. She spreads her wardrobe across the bed, the compass glinting faintly on the nightstand. Sequins and bright colors never tempted her, but neither can she hide behind the beige that makes her look like part of a wall. She settles on a gown the color of deep water, understated, cut to let her move, fabric that will not demand attention but will not shrink from it either. For shoes, she chooses low heels, comfortable enough to stand, strong enough to walk the long courtyards without faltering. She places them by the door, a decision made, one small anchor against the tide of speculation. On Wednesday, Nora calls. The laughter that once stung has cooled. Her tone is softer now. "Elise," she says, after a pause too long to be casual. "I shouldn't have joked like that. I didn't think." The air shifts between them. Elise listens, compass in her hand. She wants to scold, but she also wants her friend back. She answers with honesty stripped of ornament. "It hurt, but I know you were afraid for me." Silence, then a sigh. Real concern replaces teasing. The friendship steadies, not in jokes, but in recognition. Nora promises to keep an eye out, to scan the blogs with her sharper humor turned toward defense instead of attack. Elise feels the old trust slip back into place. Not perfect, but sturdy enough to hold. Later in the week, Maggie Rowan from HR stops by her desk. Maggie has hair silvered into a neat bun and a reputation for fairness. She asks for a quiet check-in. No judgment, just policy. They sit in a small office with blinds half closed against afternoon glare. Maggie asks questions about roles, boundaries, perceptions. Elise answers with outcomes, not excuses. She explains the event schedule, the staffing lists, the contingencies she has already set. She speaks calmly, like someone who understands the difference between gossip and work. Maggie nods, her expression kind. "Keep your record straight. Elise. Let your work speak." Elise leaves the meeting not vindicated, but steadied. Policies matter, yes, but so does the way she carries herself through them. By Friday, the tasting room hums with guests. Elise passes through to check numbers. On the counter stand 2 wine glasses, one half filled with ruby red, the other empty but waiting. Graham drinks alone, yet the second glass sits there like ritual. She recognizes it for what it is, a habit left after loss, a seat left open for memory. When he steps away to greet a donor, Elise notices a faint fingerprint on the rim of the empty glass. Without thinking, she lifts a linen and wipes it clean. She places it back exactly where it was. It is a small gesture, invisible to anyone else, but it speaks to her about absence, about loyalty that lingers past endings. She does not comment when Graham returns. Some silences are more respectful than words. That night, Elise writes in her planner, "I will attend. On my own terms, not as ornament, not as story." She will stand in the dress she chose, in shoes that hold her steady, with a compass against her skin reminding her of the small bravery her mother once spoke of. She knows the whispers will not stop, but she will not let them decide her posture, her voice, or her worth. Near the end of the day, an email pings. It is from Cole Mercer. His tone is smooth, the words framed as collegial. "We should review the capital plans together, tonight if possible, just to be sure everything is buttoned up before the ball." Elise reads the message twice. On the surface, it sounds helpful, but beneath it, she hears the faint click of something designed to trap. She places her hand over the compass, feels its cool weight, and exhales slowly. The decision waits. Sirens do not always wail. Sometimes a forecast alone is enough to make your chest tighten. By the end of the week, the valley swelters. Temperatures climb into the high 90s. Heat settles over the vines like a heavy quilt, trapping every scent. The air tastes like pennies, metallic and dry, as if the land itself waits for something to strike. On the local news, red flag warnings bloom across maps in angry streaks. North winds gust sharp and restless, shaking eucalyptus leaves until they show their pale undersides. Everyone in Sonoma knows what it means. One careless spark can unmake entire harvests. At the Harrington Vale estate, shade tents ripple where workers string lights for the ball, tables stand half-dressed, linens pinned against the breeze, generators thrum behind the kitchens. Each sound feels louder in the tense air, as if the valley is listening with held breath. Near the front gates, media vans idle, antennas rise like insect legs, cameras ready for a headline that mixes fire, fortune, and rumor. Reporters lean against hoods with bottled water, scanning for anyone who will talk. Their patience is long, sharpened by the knowledge that spectacle always arrives eventually. Inside the main house, Elise sits at a long table with a legal pad. Her handwriting, firm and slanted, fills the page in lists, crisis items, backup routes, phone trees. She turns into a coordinator without ceremony. One by one, she checks shuttle fuel levels, making sure each bus can run longer than expected. She reviews evacuation routes for donors and staff, confirming which roads remain open and which bridges might close if the wind shifts. She posts notices written in plain language, taped at eye level in case of smoke. Please follow staff instructions. Water and masks provided. She prints extra copies, slips them into plastic sleeves, and hands them to security to place discreetly around the property. Calm words, but clear ones. The ball may sparkle, but safety must be invisible scaffolding beneath it. In the doorway, Graham pauses. He does not interrupt. He leans a shoulder against the frame, ledger under his arm, and watches Elise command the details. Her voice is steady as she assigns tasks. No edge of panic, only measured direction. She speaks to kitchen staff about emergency coolers. She asks groundskeepers to test sprinklers near the outer vines. She checks her watch, writes times down, and crosses through what is complete. Graham's gaze softens. What he sees is not ornament or distraction. It looks like leadership, quiet, unshowy, but unmistakable. When she finishes giving directions, he simply nods once, a gesture of respect, before moving on. He does not say thank you aloud, but Elise feels it all the same. The afternoon wears on like iron, the sun moves slow, pressing itself into every surface. The heat shimmers on stone paths, distorting distance. Workers walk with damp collars and flushed cheeks. Elise hands out water bottles, reminds people to take shade breaks, and thanks them by name. The estate hums with layered activity generators, pumps, the low whir of fans placed near wine barrels to keep temperatures from climbing too high, the music of industry fighting heat. She adjusts her planner. Blocks of color crowd the margins. Red for warnings, green for routes, blue for faces she needs to reassure. In the gold stripe marking the ball, she writes 2 new words, contingency protocols. By late day, the smell arrives first, not sharp smoke, but faint char. A controlled burn on public land has flared against the wind. Crews scramble, but the valley feels the tremor instantly. From the ridge, a plume lifts like gray thread against a washed-out sky. Within an hour, ash drifts soft as moth wings onto the tents, the courtyards, the polished cars arriving early for setup. Workers brush it away, only for more to settle. The story sharpens. Media crews snap photos of women wiping tablecloths, of waiters covering wine crates with tarps. A camera catches ash on Elise's sleeve as she carries another stack of water bottles to security. She does not stop. She does not flinch. She ties her hair back, tucks the compass under her blouse, and keeps moving. Inside, Graham meets with fire officials, his ledger open beside evacuation charts. His face carries the same stillness he showed at his father's bedside, calm carved out of necessity. Elise joins him briefly, offering updated counts, then slips away to adjust shuttle rosters. Her mind runs like water through pipes, carrying names and numbers and routes, not glamorous, necessary. As dusk folds into the valley, the wind settles a little. The burn remains contained. The estate still hums with anxious preparation, but the threat has not yet crossed their boundary. Elise steps outside into the courtyard. Ash falls like a strange snow, quiet but persistent. She brushes her sleeve again, then lets it land without care. She presses her hand to the compass. It is cool against her pulse, steadying her breath. She makes a choice. She will go to the ball, ash or no ash, gossip or no gossip. She revises the plan in her notebook one more time. She adds contingencies to contingencies. She closes the cover firmly, as if to trap the worry inside. Then she walks back to her apartment, slips a spare pair of flats into her tote bag, and places the compass on her nightstand, where the lamplight catches it. The storm of whispers may follow, fire may loom, but she will walk in steady, prepared, and present. What you count reveals what you love. Sometimes the most important line item is not money at all. Night falls with an orange edge along the ridge. The day's heat lingers, trapped in the stone paths and vineyard rows, but the sky cools into copper and violet. From the overlook above the estate, Elise and Graham stand side by side, one step apart. Generators hum steadily in the distance. Spotters' lights dot the hills like stars scattered on the ground. Each one marks a person awake, keeping watch against embers that travel farther than they should. Elise draws in the ash-scented air and keeps her voice low. Winds could turn by dawn. She flips open her planner, its pages crowded with color-coded notes. She has already outlined shelter plans for the seasonal crews who work the vines. If roads close, the workers cannot be stranded. She calls neighboring vineyards about shared rooms, shared meals. Most agree quickly, bound by the valley's unspoken code when fire threatens. Rivalries dissolve. She rechecks radio channels, makes sure each team has a clear line. Her pen moves with quiet certainty, turning chaos into lists. Beside her, Graham closes the harvest ledger, his father's handwriting visible in faded ink on the older pages. His palms rest flat on the leather, as though grounding himself in the weight of history. For all the company's modern systems, he still tallies people and crops in longhand, the way his father did. The ledger is more than numbers. It is memory, ritual, and responsibility pressed into paper. Elise sees the way his shoulders ease when it is near him. News arrives before midnight. Robert Harrington is stable after surgery. The message comes folded in Graham's sister's voice over the phone, with an additional note tucked inside. Robert had scrawled it with shaky hand, "Protect people first." Graham folds the note and slides it between ledger pages. His jaw tightens, but his eyes soften. Elise pretends to be absorbed in radio updates, giving him the dignity of private grief. Inside the main office, the air is cooler. A shelf holds a vinyl sleeve, edges worn, colors muted by years. Elise notices it for the first time. The title is half faded, but she recognizes the record, a waltz her mother once played on Sunday mornings. The sleeve sits slightly pulled out, as if handled recently. She imagines Graham lifting it from the shelf, placing it on a turntable, letting sound fill rooms that otherwise hold only silence. The thought sharpens her awareness of his solitude, the way grief softens a man's edges without dissolving his spine. She says nothing. She straightens a stack of papers, careful not to disturb the vinyl. Some gestures require respect in silence. As she leaves the office later, Cole Mercer waits in the hallway. He leans casually against the wall, tie loosened, expression smooth as glass. A manila envelope rests in his hand. "Elise," he says, tone friendly, almost conspiratorial. "I thought you might want to see this." He extends the envelope, tilting it toward her as though offering help. There are questions about old acquisitions, some altered documentation. If the wrong people see it, you might get caught in the crossfire. I'd hate to see that happen to you. Elise does not reach for it. "Why show me?" "Because," he replies, voice silky. "You're smart. You know how fragile positions can be, and I can make sure you land on your feet. A better role, a cleaner exit. All you need to do is let me handle the rest." His smile widens, but his eyes stay cold. The hum of the generators filters faintly through the walls. Elise feels the envelope's weight without touching it. She knows the bargain being offered. It is not rescue. It is compliance. She steadies her breath. "No. Thank you." Her voice is calm, clipped. She does not take the envelope. For a heartbeat, Cole's smile falters. The mask cracks just enough to show irritation beneath. Then he recovers, slipping the envelope back under his arm. "Think about it," he says lightly, though his jaw has tightened. He steps aside, leaving her a narrow path. His cologne lingers sharp in the hall, like something meant to cover decay. Back in her own apartment later, Elise opens her phone. Her thumb hovers. Then she types a message to Nora. She keeps it simple. "Need help? Check filings, vendors, anything on acquisitions from 5 years back." The reply comes within minutes. One word, quick and certain, "On it." Elise sets the phone down, rests her hand on the compass at her throat, and listens. Outside, the night air carries the scent of ash mixed with coolness off the river. Hum and quiet, weight and relief. The envelope remains behind, unopened, but the thread is clear now, dressed as mercy. Some traps require your signature to spring. Refuse the pen, and the trap snaps on the hand that set it. Cole requests a private meeting the next morning. He chooses one of the smaller offices near the eastern wing, a room with no windows, only pale walls and the hum of a vent. The envelope lies waiting on the table, centered as if it were the guest of honor. Cole sits across from Elise with his legs crossed, his hands steepled. His tone is smooth as lacquer. "Prudence," he says. "Future. Optics. We both know the board is restless. These things matter." He slides the envelope an inch toward her, a push disguised as courtesy. Elise keeps her hands folded in her lap. She does not flinch, does not let her breath break rhythm. She thinks of her compass at home, the way it warms against her skin when she touches it. She thinks of her mother, steady at the kitchen sink, facing hard years with a calm no storm could shake. Cole waits for her to reach out. She does not. "Inside," he says, "are documents that could make this very difficult for you, or, if handled correctly, could buy you freedom. I can help you land on the right side of this. But you need to open it. You need to be smart." Elise meets his gaze. "I don't need immunity." The words leave her mouth steady as poured water. He blinks, as if unused to refusal. "Don't be reckless. I choose risk," she answers quietly. Overwrought, the envelope stays where it is. She does not touch it. That afternoon, her phone lights up with messages from Nora. Screenshots flood in, marked with circles and arrows. Shell companies registered under different names, but funded through accounts tied to Sloan Waverly. Payment dates that align too neatly with the timing of blog leaks. The lines connect like wire pulled across a frame. Someone had been laying scaffolding for this story, long before Elise was asked to dance. Elise exhales, prints every screenshot, and arranges them by date. She begins a private audit, pulling timestamps from storage logs, tracing document trails. Each entry is marked with her initials in neat handwriting. She files one copy for Maggie in HR, sealed in a folder that carries no label. She stores another off-site, locked in a safe, Nora arranged through a friend. The work is quiet, methodical. Her heart thuds, but her pen stays steady. Cole corners her again, near dusk. The office hall is mostly empty, shadows stretching long across the carpet. He leans close enough for her to see the thin shine of sweat near his hairline. "You don't understand," he says, voice low but sharp. "This isn't about right or wrong. It's about survival. You won't survive this." His mask slips. The practiced smile vanishes, leaving the raw edge of threat. Elise stands straighter, her folder tucked against her chest. "I've survived worse than paper." Her tone is calm, even tender, as if she were correcting a child's mistake. For a moment, silence. Then Cole forces a smile back into place. "We'll see." The door closes behind her, the echo sharp as a gavel. Later, at her apartment. Elise makes tea, though she does not drink it. She sits at her table, papers spread before her, the hum of the refrigerator steady in the background. Her eyes move over each detail, every dotted line and faint watermark. But her mind returns to the envelope she never opened. Her phone buzzes. The number is unknown. The message is short. "Watch your step tomorrow night." Elise reads it twice, then sets the phone face down. Her hands rest on the table, fingers curled as if gripping invisible edges. She looks toward her closet where her gown waits, pressed and ready. The ball is hours away. She arrives expecting gossip. She does not expect to feel taller just by standing in her own name. The estate glows like a lantern set against the valley's dark edges. Strings of bulbs loop between oaks, their light soft and golden. The smell of smoke lingers in the night air, carried from the ridge, but here it mingles with honey from poured late harvest wines. Elise steps from the car in a gown of understated blue, low heels planted firmly on gravel. She is steady, unadorned, her hair swept into a knot that feels practical more than ceremonial. Still, heads turn, whispers catch. The simple act of her arrival bends the current of the evening. Donors drift like schools of fish, each with practiced smiles and crystal glasses balanced in their hands. Musicians play under the terrace awning, the sound of strings weaving through laughter. Cole and Sloan circle separately, but in careful arcs, always near enough to intercept, never far enough to lose sight. Elise chooses to stay near the staff. She trusts the vineyard managers with sunburned faces, the operations team who keep shuttles running, the caterers setting out bread. With them, her presence is not a curiosity. She belongs. Across the courtyard, Graham nods once in her direction. His expression carries no show, only acknowledgement, like a line written clearly in the ledger. Mid-evening, a sound breaks the pattern. A sprinkler alarm shrills in the historic barrel room. The chatter halts, silverware stills. Then voices rise, sharp and quick, like startled birds. A rumor outruns the facts. Neglected maintenance, cost-cutting, they don't watch the details anymore. Elise feels the eyes swing toward her. She straightens her shoulders, lifts her chin, and walks, not runs toward the barrel room doors. Inside, the air smells of wet oak and singed dust. Red lights pulse along the ceiling, throwing shadows against racks of barrels stacked like sleeping giants. Staff hover, Unsure whether to step forward or retreat, Elise kneels beside the control panel. Her hands are calm, steady. She pulls up the maintenance logs on her tablet, scrolling through timestamps and emails. There it is. A technician's note, logged earlier that day. A bypass forced, not scheduled. The entry time does not align with her approved work orders. This was not neglect. It was a hand. She exhales once, long and slow. Security arrives. Radios clip to their belts. Elise hands one the tablet, pointing to the record. This wasn't equipment failure. Someone interfered. They nod, already moving to secure the room, already calling for footage from the camera feed. The donors are restless outside, the whispers thickening into judgment. But the facts are shifting. The story is no longer one of oversight. It is one of intent. Elise wipes a fingerprint off the rim of a wine glass sitting abandoned on a crate. She places it back exactly as it had been, her hands careful even in chaos. The alarm stops. The hush after is heavier than the sound had been. Conversations restart, but quieter, edged with unease. Cole appears at the doorway, expression composed but taut at the edges. Handled quickly, he says for others to hear. But his eyes catch Elise's, and she sees it the flicker of frustration when a plan bends instead of breaks. Sloane lingers near the terrace, her posture elegant, her gaze sharp. Elise feels weighed but not diminished. Minutes later, a radio crackles in the courtyard. A lookout on the ridge reports a flare has jumped a line. A small fire, but near enough that precaution becomes duty. Guests must be moved, calmly and now. Elise touches the compass at her throat. The metal warms against her skin. She breathes in 4 counts. Out 4 counts. She squares her shoulders and begins to give instructions. Leadership can be loud. Sometimes it sounds like one calm woman telling 20 people where to go and how to breathe. The evacuation begins like a dance. Elise does not raise her voice. She does not need to. She steps into the current of the crowd and steadies it with direction. Her words short and clear. Shuttles to the east gate, families first. Blankets are in the crates by the terrace, 2 per shuttle. She counts heads as people move, marking tallies on her clipboard. Donors accustomed to control allow themselves to be guided, surprised perhaps by the authority of a woman they once considered background. Staff are sent home in zones, vineyard workers and caterers dismissed with thanks. Each one accounted for. The courtyard that had hummed with music now fills with the low rumble of engines and the shuffle of careful steps. Elise holds the center steady. Inside the barrel room, sprinklers had left a mist that lingers in the air, cooling the oak and the stone floor. The smell of wet wood replaces the earlier sting of smoke. Somewhere in the corner, a speaker still hums, caught on a playlist older than the evening. A waltz floats soft and improbable, the notes bending through the haze. Graham stands near the racks, his jacket damp at the shoulders. His posture, usually carved of discipline, carries fatigue tonight. When he sees Elise step into the room, clipboard under her arm, his eyes soften. He does not bow or gesture with flourish. He only extends a hand. She hesitates for half a breath, aware of the absurdity gowns and tuxedos outside. Alarms still cooling, guests still unsettled. But this is not spectacle. It is thanks. Elise places her hand in his. His palm is warm despite the mist. One slow turn, her low heels slide across damp stone. The waltz carries them, unhurried, unmeasured. Their breaths draw close, shared in the thin air of steam and silence. Grief lingers at the edges of Graham's face, but gratitude finds its way through. Elise feels both, feels the way 2 people can hold sorrow and steadiness in the same space. No eyes watch, no cameras intrude. The dance is theirs, and it is enough. Outside, word comes through the radio. The flare has been contained. Fire lines hold. The ridge quiets. Stars appear again above the valley, faint but steady. Guests resume their chatter, lighter now, though colored with the night's tension. In the barrel room, the final chords fade. Elise steps back first, her hand slipping from his with a simple nod. No speeches, no promises, no added weight. Work resumes. The sprinklers click off. Staff mop the floor, replace linens, reset the scene as if chaos had been only rehearsal. But in memory, the dance stays. A private turn under mist. A reminder that steadiness can hold beauty too. Later, in a shadowed walkway that cuts behind the estate kitchens. Cole thumbs his phone. The glow of the screen paints his face in cold blue. His message is short, sent to Sloan. Dawn, board session. We hold the script. The valley sleeps. But morning will not. They plan to make her small in a room full of suits. She brought the receipts. The board assembles at first light. Coffee steams in paper cups. Bitter and too hot. Eyes are red. Jackets rumpled. Tempers pulled thin by smoke and lack of sleep. The long table gleams under cold fixtures. At one end, Graham sets the old harvest ledger down. Its cracked spine looks out of place beside Elise's tablet, but it sits there like a witness from another time. The weight of paper, the clarity of ink. Beside it, the pulse of data. Both ready. Cole begins first. His voice is smooth, confident. He calls the ball a fiasco. He cites compromised judgment. He gestures toward Elise without naming her, weaving words about distraction and sentiment. Sloan adds her edge. She presents slides polished to a sheen, graphs designed to wound. Records show inconsistencies, she says. Leadership blurred by personal ties. Her tone is clinical, precise, the cut of a scalpel. Several board members nod. For a moment, the tide seems theirs. Elise straightens her spine. She has no slides, no theatrics, only evidence, one line at a time. She begins with the shell companies, Nora's screenshots, traced through filings, registered under quiet names but tied back to Sloan's accounts. Dates align too neatly with blog leaks. She sets the printouts down in a neat stack. She moves to the bonus clauses. Pages from Cole's own contracts, highlighted. Clauses that paid out when share prices dropped, not rose. She places the papers beside the first stack, her voice calm. Then the sprinkler tampering. Logs pulled from the system. Timestamps exact. The forced bypass entered under Cole's badge number. She does not raise her tone. She lets the numbers speak. One claim, one proof, one breath. The room stills. Coffee forgotten. Jackets shift uneasily. On the screen at the far end, Robert Harrington appears. His voice is thin from recovery, but steady. He does not speak like an executive. He speaks like a man who remembers droughts that killed vines, frosts that cracked shoots, laborers who kept working through ash because families needed paychecks. He speaks of grief and grit. He reminds them what the company is for, not optics, not headlines, wine and land and people who endure. And then he names Elise. I see in her what my son needs beside him. She steadied you in crisis. She led where others wavered. That is the record I care about. The ledger rests open before him, one page showing his shaky script, protect people first. The vote comes, hands rise, one by one. Cole is removed, referred to authorities for investigation. His face hardens, jaw clenched, but he says nothing. Sloan's access is revoked. Her expression does not crack, but her silence speaks of calculations undone. Graham remains as CEO. His eyes flick briefly to Elise, not in triumph, but in acknowledgement, as though the ledger itself had spoken through her. And Elise is named interim COO. Formal review to follow in 3 months, but the title is hers. The decision is written into minutes, black on white, like any other fact. Twist and truth arrive together. The old ledger and the new audit align. Tradition and data, ink and code, both making the same case for integrity. Elise exhales. She does not smile, not yet. The work is not done, but her name now lives on the page not as rumor, but as record. When the session ends, dawn has turned full morning. Press crowds the lobby, cameras lifted, Microphones pointed, questions wait like arrows. Elise pauses at the threshold. The compass rests cool against her skin. She must decide how to speak, still invisible, or plainly seen. For years she kept her head down and her voice soft. Today she looks up. The voice stays soft, but everyone hears it. The lobby is a wall of microphones. Reporters lean forward, cameras blink red, questions rise like a tide. Elise steps past Graham, past board members shifting in suits. The compass at her throat feels cool, steady. She does not clear her throat or raise her voice. She simply begins. This company has always been about people and land. That's what matters. Not rumors, not distractions, just the work. The words are plain, free of polish. She does not defend herself against gossip. She names what she knows: long days in the vineyards, staff who show up before sunrise, the weight of barrels and the patience of ferment. She names honesty as the only currency that lasts. The press scribbles, cameras click, but her cadence stays warm, her tone unhurried. Older viewers watching from their kitchens feel it most. She sounds like someone who could be trusted with house keys, or with grandchildren. The steadiness in her voice is the opposite of spectacle. It is care, spoken aloud. Later that afternoon, Elise drives to the hospital in Santa Rosa. Robert Harrington rests in a private room with wide windows and morning light still clinging to the sill. His hands tremble, but his eyes are bright. He reaches for hers. The skin is thin, paper soft. "Build the company you already carry," he says. Just that. A simple blessing. Elise bows her head slightly, as though the words were a mantle placed on her shoulders. That evening, she returns home to find a covered pot on her porch, a note taped to the lid in Nora's familiar scrawl. "I was afraid. I am proud." She carries the soup inside, sets it on the counter, and sits for a moment in the kitchen chair. She lets herself breathe, lets herself smile. Forgiveness and friendship return not as thunder, but as a warm meal left at the door. The next morning, headquarters feels calmer. The glass walls still reflect, but their copies do not sting the way they once did. Staff nod at her in passing, not curious, respectful. In Graham's office, a map of the valley stretches across the table, hills and rivers, parcels marked in colored pencil. Beside it, 2 coffee cups steam. Elise takes hers with both hands, inhaling the quiet strength of the moment. Near the door, the vinyl leans against the wall, sleeve slightly worn. It waits, ready for the day when a room needs a song to soften its edges again. The power is not in a headline. Elise realizes, not in cameras or votes or titles. The power is in ordinary rituals done together with care. Soup left on a porch, ledgers balanced with honesty, coffee shared over maps. That is what steadies a company. That is what steadies a life. The board meets next week to formalize her role. The future looks like work, but in the margins, Elise sees room for joy. Some endings whisper. They feel like quilts on chairbacks and laughter under string lights, not fireworks. 6 months pass. The ridge greens again. Smoke memories fade into the crispness of early autumn. Days shorten, evenings cool, and the second crop sweetens on the vines. Smaller clusters carrying concentrated sugars. Employee housing stands sturdier now. New roofs, stronger insulation, small gardens planted out front. The work crews carry pride in more than wages they see permanence. Proof that care has weight. A scholarship fund has begun under Elise's name. She protested at first, embarrassed by the spotlight, but the staff insisted because she had refused to disappear. Doors opened for their children. Her name on the fund means one thing only: possibility. The harvest supper stretches the length of the courtyard. Long tables under strings of bulbs, quilts thrown over chair backs, dishes passed hand to hand. Kids chase each other between barrels, their laughter rising higher than the fiddle that saws joy into the night. Steam curls from casseroles. Bread tears warm in the hand, bottles open, glasses clink, Stories travel down the tables like migrating birds. The air tastes of roasted apples and young wine. Elise sits among them, not above. Her gown is traded for a simple sweater, her hair loosened. She laughs with the vineyard crew, listens to Maggie's dry jokes, thanks the kitchen staff by name. For once, no rumor follows her. Only recognition. Graham watches from across the table, a quiet smile settling on his face. He no longer sets two glasses out of habit. He sets them with intention. Tonight, one stands before him, the other before Elise. Not shadow, not memory, choice. On a shelf at his house, a small ring box rests closed. He has not rushed it open. Promises do not need to be shouted to be real. Presence itself is a vow, waiting with patience. Later, they walk the hillside, leaving the noise behind. Stars scatter overhead, cool and sharp. The valley hums faint with night insects, with vines settling after heat. They stop where the ridge opens wide to the river's curve. Graham takes her hand, not as a question, but as a statement. They share a vow, quiet as breath, not drama, direction, to build, not to chase, to carry steadiness together. The compass pendant remains at her throat. A simple band joins it, north and home. Back inside, Elise pulls the old harvest ledger closer. She writes in neat, careful script on archival paper, the ink still wet when she sets the page in. We prosper when people do. She signs her name beneath, not rumor, not whisper, record. The night winds cool the valley. String lights sway. Music folds into the dark. No shock closes the story. Only a deep turn from survival to stewardship. From fire to second harvest. From being seen as distraction to being trusted as compass. A season ends. Another waits. Not crisis. Opportunity. The valley breathes. The record is ready when they are. This story reminds us that courage does not always arrive with trumpets and grand gestures. More often, it comes in teaspoons, a quiet yes when fear says no, a steady voice when others choose silence, a choice to keep one's integrity when compromise would be easier. Elise Carter was not seeking the spotlight, yet by refusing to disappear, she discovered her own strength and, in turn, gave strength to others. For many of us, especially in later years, it can feel tempting to step back, to let younger voices or louder ones take the stage. But this tale shows that dignity, honesty, and compassion remain timeless powers. They do not fade with age, they deepen. A life lived with steadiness can still inspire change in rooms full of noise. The lesson is simple, but profound. Protect what is good, even when it seems small. Relationships, trust, truth. These are the legacies that outlast gossip and outshine wealth. And sometimes, being truly seen is not about seeking attention, but about standing firm in who we are, so that others may find the courage to do the same. Thank you so much for spending your time with this story. If it touched your heart, if it reminded you of the quiet strength we all carry, please give it a like, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories of resilience, love, and hope to life. Stay with us. There is always another chapter waiting.